Getting stranded because something went wrong with your motorcycle is a horrible ordeal and maybe a long walk if you're riding solo. This series is going to show you how to never get stranded. Hi, I'm Bill Babcock with Expert Amateur, where we show you how to increase your skill level for things you love to do. This episode of our Never Get Stranded series is about flat tires. First I'm going to show you how to fix a flat on a tube tire. And then we're going to cover plugging tubeless tires. And finally we'll cover tools and spares you should carry so you can be certain you're never going to be stranded by a flat tire. Changing a tire or fixing a flat is fundamentally the same techniques. If you take your tire to a dealership to get a tire replaced, you're spending time and money and you're giving up the opportunity to practice something that is much easier to learn at home or in your shop or in your driveway than it is out by the side of the road. So I would encourage you to always change your own wheels. You might think you need a lot of special equipment for that you need a tire changing machine and you need great big huge tire irons, but you don't. I'm going to show you how to do it with two little tiny tire irons that are made out of aluminum, weigh nothing, cheap, and we're going to do it with a particularly difficult wheel. This is a Moto Z Tractionator. It's a rear wheel off of a 390 KTM ADV. This is an aftermarket wheel. It's tubeless, cross spoke, and this is a tube tire. It's not designed to be tubeless. One of the things you want to pay attention to when you're fixing anything on your bike is every part you take off has to go into something reasonably secure, a good place to so you're not going to be losing parts out in the middle of nowhere where you can't replace them. So just get in the habit, you need some kind of a container, I don't care what it is, to put your parts into. Step one is removing the valve cord. So this is the valve cord, don't lose it, put it in your container. Then I'm going to back out the lock nut off the stem. And as you can see, this is definitely a tube tire. I've taken the normal sealed filler off this thing and put in a tube. And this tube is a heavy-duty tube. I absolutely hate heavy-duty tubes. They just make it harder to change tires, make it harder to fix flats. I don't really think they add anything protective. A lot of people would probably disagree with me. But basically, this heavy-duty tube is going to create nothing but problems. So we're going to have to use a special technique to get this tube in or out. You can't, with a normal tube, you would just be taking off one side of the tire, grabbing the tube, pulling it out, patching it, and putting it back in, getting back on the road, or replacing it with a spare tube if you've done something like rip the tube stem out. That once the bead has been broken, this tire, the bead has to be down in this valley opposite where we're working so that we can reduce the effective circumference. Nothing stretches the bead on a tire. You're just simply levering the bead over the edge. The other thing we need to know about is tire lube. Tire lube is an absolute necessity. This is Nomar tire lube. I love this stuff. This is what I use all the time. I've used a lot of other tire lubes. There's tons of them out there. Ruglide, etc., etc. You're going to lubricate both sides because you're going to have to break the bead on both sides. I see people do all kinds of crazy stuff to break beads. Stick the tires in a hydraulic press, or get a great big long lever and torque on it. It's not necessary. Even if a tire is particularly resistant to getting the bead broken, You can use the kickstand on your motorcycle to squeeze the tire down in and pop it. And once you've broken the bead in one place, the rest of it's pretty easy. But really, if you have tire lube on the tire and it's good lube, you can do this. You can just stick your tire iron in and break the bead. I mean, how hard was that? This tire's been on here for a while, so I wouldn't be surprised if I was struggling to break the bead. And it is a nasty little tire, and it's got a retaining. On any kind of a tubeless tire, there's an additional little rim that keeps the tire against the outer rim of the tire, so it keeps that sealed. So that you have to get over that rim. That makes it a little more difficult, but you can see it wasn't hard at all. So with the bead broken, you have to, here's the valve stem. We're gonna take the stem side out first. You're not gonna find rim locks on a tubeless tire, for the simple reason that drilling the hole to put the rim lock in compromises the seal. But if you're working with a regular spoked wheel and you have a rim lock, you start removing the rim at the rim lock, and you do it by loosening up the lock nut, pushing it all the way in, and getting your tire bead past the rim lock. But since this is not a rim lock wheel, we're going to start on the valve, right next to the valve stem. So we make sure that our tire is down in the valley, stick in our tire iron, and it's as easy as that. You're going to take little bites with the second tire iron, and you don't want to be pulling too far down here. You really only need to get a little past vertical to get the bead over the rim. And I should swap these two. These tire irons are really cleverly made. This one is very plain, and it's a spoon shape, so it goes in easily, and it comes out easily. This one is a little more, a little squarer, and it has a little nub on it, so it kind of locks in and stays, which is handy for if I was using it the other way around. I did it backwards. This one would kind of lock itself in. I could leave it, and this one doesn't. But as you can see, getting this tire off is not exactly difficult. So, okay, I've got this side off, and that means this side is automatically down in the drop center. And in normal circumstances, with a regular tube, I would be just pulling up on this side here and pulling and reaching in here, getting the hold of the valve stem and pulling the tube out. And we repair it, put it back in the same way, and we're back in business. With this heavy-duty tube, that's almost impossible. So what you have to do is you have to take the whole wheel off. So I'm just going to push the valve stem up with the tire iron to get it away from the bead, and then I'm just going to force the tire, reach under with my tire tool, and just force the tire off this rim. And with the tire lube, it's all pretty easy. I can just pull it off. So now I've got it off. There's my wheel. Here's that little rim I was talking about that makes it a little more difficult to get the bead broken. This rim is there to keep the bead against the seal. Even if you lose some pressure, it'll keep the bead against the seal. It's ramped on this side, so it's easy for it to pop over, and it's a little steeper on this side, so it retains the bead, sort of. You can't rely on it for too much. But so And now we can pull our tube out, and you can see this heavy-duty tube, big pain in the neck. It's hard to get out of the tire, even with it off the rim. But okay, so I've got it out. It's nice to put some baby powder on the tire. You want to put it on the inside of the tire. And what that does is, if it's a cornstarch based baby powder, it won't affect the rubber in any way. It lets the tire skid over the tube a little bit. I've never been able to actually prove that it does much of anything, but a lot of people swear by it. People swearing by something is not necessarily a meaningful thing. I've been working on motorcycles for somewhere around 50 years, and I come up with stupid crap all the time. So now I just kind of line up the hole for my valve stem with the valve stem, double check the direction which I've got on. This is the sprocket side. It's going to turn this way when we're going forward. And here's the direction arrow going this way, so I've got to do it this side. Now I bring my valve stem aligned with that, and I can just, since I've got some good tire lube on this, I can just push this down and put my weight on it and get the tire on. Because I've got the tire deep in the valley as soon as I started it, and then I just keep going. Now you just got to make sure that the tube is over the edge, which again, because it's heavy duty, it's going to fight us all the way. And we need to get the valve stem through the hole. The way we do that is we just fiddle. There's no great way to do it. You just have to eyeball it, find the valve stem, and try to get it in the hole, and then push it through. Okay, so I've got it through. I'm not going to take the time to try and get the camera angle just right. Well, maybe I'm going to have to, since I dropped my lock nut. We're going to put the lock nut on and get a couple of turns in the lock nut, so that when we start working on getting the tire all the way on, the valve stem doesn't disappear and we have to start all over again. Okay, we got it started. We put a couple of turns on it just to make sure it's not going to go crazy and disappear on us. And then I'll introduce you to this little device. This is a worthwhile thing to have. It doesn't work as well on this on a cross spoke wheel, because this little slot is supposed to engage with the spokes and keep this thing in place. And the angle of these spokes is so steep that it won't do that. But if I push it in, I can start the process and just put this thing in, even without locking it on the spoke. And it's going to keep it's going to keep the tire pushed down and aimed into the valley. It won't just start sliding up on me. Of course, you still need to check it. You want to, whenever this thing starts to get tight, you're just going to assume that that the tire has popped out of the valley, out of the drop center, and now you're working against the design of the tire, and you don't want to do that. So you just start taking small bites, pulling this over, and as you're pulling it over, you keep pushing it down into the tire, into the rim, I'm sorry, into that drop center, and that loosens up the rest of the tire. If you don't do that, this is almost impossible. If you don't have good tire lube, it's almost impossible. Now, some people swear by using something like WD-40 for tire lube. I think that's a bad idea. WD-40 is a persistent lubricant. I mean, it's not a great lubricant, but it doesn't go away. Silicone is even worse. And And while it will certainly make it feasible for you to get the tire on and off, it's going to hang around. Now, you just see that just tightened up. The reason why it tightened up is because the tire has popped up onto the bead. The bead has popped up onto the rim. And now as soon as I push that back down again, I'm back to, it's easy to do. So you gotta take a look at that every so often. And now it's put itself because it's loose enough. So we've got that taken care of. Another big benefit of using a good tire lube is in seating the bead. Now you'll have, a lot of people will tell you all that, you got to put 40 pounds of air pressure in to seat the bead, all that kind of stuff. Or you put in whatever it takes, and there's some kind of big bang when the bead seats. It's all very dramatic and very unnecessary. The bead will seat with about 5 pounds of tire pressure if it's lubricated. If it's not lubricated, then yeah, big bangs. So even though I'm here in my shop and I have compressed air everywhere, I'm going to use this little portable tire pump. These are great. You really want to carry one of these. So I've pushed the valve stem through quite a ways, giving me enough room to lock this on. And I apologize in advance for the noise. I'm only going to let this run until it seats the bead, then we'll stop the video and I'll fill it to full pressure. But this, the thing I want you to see is how the bead is going to seat because it's lubricated. So we'll set this to 36 pounds. And as I say, I have noise canceling lavalier mics on, but I'm sure that sounds terrible on the video. So it'll take a couple of minutes, it'll take probably 40, 50 seconds to start putting pressure. And you're going to see this rim right here is going to just slowly pop up and close this gap. We're at 4 pounds pressure now, and we're almost completely seated. Now we're completely seated with 4 pounds of pressure. And if you look at this little rim, this little line around the edge here, it shows that we are well seated all the way around. So let me stop that racket. And this, by the way, I'll be showing you more about this later, but this is not only a compressor, it's also a jump starter, a battery bank, and a flashlight. Super versatile. So that's it for putting the tire back on. What we've actually shown you is how to replace a tire because we took this all the way off only because it had a heavy-duty tube, and those are just so difficult to manage. I really hate them. But the only other thing I'm going to talk about is tire pressure monitoring. In the old days, I used these. This is an indicating valve stem, valve cap. I still have like maybe 2 of them kicking around just because I haven't thrown them away. But now I use a tire pressure monitoring system. They're available for about 30 bucks on Amazon. I'll put a link down in the comments. All of my links, by the way, are affiliate links. So I make a couple of bucks if you buy it from that link. But of course it doesn't cost you anything, so why not? Let's talk about plugging. I carry, no matter what kind of wheels and tires I have on the bike, I carry the same stuff. I carry a patch kit for the tube, because even though I've done a million of these things, I'm perfectly capable of pinching the flat while I'm pinching a brand new tube while I'm putting it in the bike. Done it a million times. But most of my bikes are tubeless. I greatly prefer that for off-road because I can plug a flat and be back on the road in 10 minutes instead of however long this took us. So as I said before, 99.9% of the flat tires are puncture in the middle of the back wheel. The back wheel, the front wheel picks up the nail and the back wheel impales itself on it. If the nail's flat on the ground, like they all are, then when you roll over it, nothing happens. But when the front tire rolls over it, it can pick it up on occasion, make it stand up as it rolls over it, and then the back tire dives on top of the sword. So all you have to do is you find whatever's making your tire go flat on a tubeless, pull it out. You can either run a rasp in and out, or you can just take the insertion tool and stick it in and back and forth a few times, maybe spit on it to lube it a little bit. Then you take one of these sticky strings, thread it through, push it in until there's about a ½ inch of the string left sticking out on both sides, okay? And then you pull the loop back out. Now, there's a slit here, and in theory, when you pull it back out again, this is gonna pop off. In practice, even though they all have those, I haven't found them to work all that well. So just to be safe, I don't wanna be pulling the string all the way back out. So I pull it out just far enough for me to cut the loop. And then I can, if I'm feeling a little OCD, which I don't ever, I might trim that up some. But basically, once it's cut and it's in there, you just ride on it and get back on the road. And that's a marvelous thing. It's, you know, tubeless tires are great for that. Of course, you can get a sidewall cut that you can't patch that way. Of course, you can get a dent in the wheel that on a tubeless tire means it won't seal and you're going to have to put in a tube. So yes, we always bring a tube along. I mean, I have a basic set of tools and equipment on my bikes that's always there. But in all cases, if even in that kind of edge case where I have a slice out of the side or a bent rim, putting a tube in to this tubeless tire is a perfectly good repair. Sometimes that doesn't work. Maybe your sidewall cut is massive and the tube is coming right out through the side. In that case, you'll see this is a tube and it's in a plastic bag, and then I've wrapped these zip ties around the plastic bag and taped it down really tight so I can fit it into a Moscow Moto Oxpac. And some of you know what that means, and some of you say, what? I'll explain later in a different episode. But the purpose of these zip ties is, if all else fails, if I can't fix this flat, I can zip tie the tire to the wheel. And if I zip tie the tire to the wheel, it's not going to be a happy ride out, but I can do it. If you try to drive a motorcycle with a flat tire, you'll get about 50 yards before the tire comes off the rim and you can't go any further. So if you zip tie it on, there's about 10 in this package. I use them all. I zip tie every few inches all the way around and pull them real tight. And I've gone 13 miles with my tire zip tied onto my wheel. We've covered fixing a flat, we've covered plugging a flat, and now we're going to cover tools that you can carry, and probably should. So we've already kind of talked about this. This is a nice little compressor. I think this was $69 on Amazon. I'll have a link to a similar one. There's a lot to choose from. But it's also a jump starter. This is a little super capacitor, plugs in, charges up, and I know you look at something like this and say, how good of a jump starter could this be? I've started a 6.7 liter diesel with this. I started my tractor yesterday morning with this. I've started my Husqvarna numerous times. It's also a battery bank, so you can charge your devices in camp. Very handy. These are the tire irons I was using. You probably notice how short these are compared to stuff I use in the shop. And these are actually my favorite tire irons now. They don't mark up the rim. They're aluminum. You can see by all the chew marks, I've been using them for a while. Not as long as I've been using these. These are probably older than most of the people watching this video. I brazed these up back in the late 60s, early 70s to work on BMW rims when I was a mechanic long ago. Because BMWs have had aluminum rims for a long time. So the other nice thing about these tire irons, besides that little nub, which is a remarkable and fabulous little invention, they also have box wrenches on them. This one has a 13 on this side, and on this side it's a 10. Very clever. This is a 32 millimeter, but I've got inserts for it, aluminum inserts for 27 millimeters and 22 millimeters. So this will take off just about any axle nut I can think of. Useful tools. I mentioned I dumped out my little bag full of stuff to fix tires. So I carry plug kits, and I carry patch kits. I carry CO2 tire inflators. I never use them. I don't know how old these are, but this is a simple device. This end goes on the valve cap, then you run the CO2 cartridge into it, and it punctures the CO2 cartridge and fills your tire. One CO2 cartridge will barely fill a tire. It takes about 3 of them for a rear tube, so I carry 3. Tire lube, when you're on the road, I take a shop rag, smear a dab of tire lube on it, and stuff it in a plastic bag. And then I can use the tire lube full strength, but you don't need to. You need it. This is just this tire lube, about 2 tablespoons of it, and about a half a gallon of water. And mix it up good, and you've got great tire lube. So, and then you just fold this up, stick it in a plastic bag. When you need tire lube, you dump some water in here, squish it around, and you've got pro-level tire lube. As I mentioned, I don't recommend using silicone lube. It's persistent, stays on the tire for a long time. If you get a slow leak or your air down, there's a good chance that you're going to spin the tire on the wheel rim and rip out your valve stem. So I don't use silicone. I don't recommend it. That's about it for tires, tools for tires. In the upcoming episodes, we're going to be talking about kickstand switches that can definitely strand you. We'll also talk about one of the things that you can easily get in trouble with is running off an embankment, or sticking your bike in a snowbank, or just finding a section of road you just can't get past. So I almost always carry a recovery kit. We'll cover how to use them, but this is a real money saver. I went off the embankment on Usel Road on the Lost Coast last year, and put my bike down about 100 feet on a slope that was about as steep as a cow's face, and we couldn't get it back up because I didn't have this. I had this on. I owned this. It was on another motorcycle. I didn't bother to transfer it over to my old BMW, and so I was stuck and stranded. And I had to the next day I had to get a tow truck with a really skilled recovery driver to come out and get my bike for me at a cost of around $1,600. which makes the less than $100 that this system costs seem pretty cheap. So we'll talk about how to recover your bike. We'll also talk a little bit about first aid. I carry either a small kit or a bigger one. This isn't really a matter of getting stranded, although an injury that you can fix on yourself. This is for more serious stuff. This is kind of, okay, you're bleeding and we're going to stop that. And we'll cover tools you should carry on your bike. I'm a tool freak, unapologetically. So we'll have an episode on tools and how to pick the right tools to carry with you. Last but not least, we'll cover how not to run out of gas. There's a lot of solutions for that. Some of them are bulky and kind of clumsy. I've tried everything. I have some pretty small bikes with 5.5 gallon gas tanks on them. So I'll show you all the solutions that I've come up with over the years and the things that I think work best. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this. If you like this content, if you found it useful, please give me a like. If you want to see all these other episodes, we're going to be doing probably one a week for the foreseeable future. Then subscribe, and we'll see you out on the road.